Welcome to our channel, where the stories of people from different eras and professions come to life. We are in magnificent Ephesus, right by the sea, where the great temple of Artemis reaches toward the heavens, and ships from all over the world fill the harbor. Subscribe, and after listening, be sure to share your impressions in the comments.
Let's start with the main guy, Zeus. He is the god of the sky and the ruler of Olympus. He is living proof that absolute power completely erases any sense of boundaries. Zeus was the youngest son of Cronus and Rhea. His father, like all good dads, had the habit of swallowing his children whole. This was necessary so they wouldn't take his power away from him. Romantic, right? Fortunately, Rhea saved little Zeus. She tricked Cronus by wrapping a stone in a blanket. This says a lot about how attentive that guy was. When Zeus grew up, he led a divine rebellion against Cronus. He cut open his father's belly, Freud would have loved this, and freed his brothers and sisters, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Hestia, and Demeter. Boom! That's how the first dysfunctional family was born. After the gods won the war against the Titans, Zeus became king. He ruled the heavens, controlled thunder and lightning, and was responsible for cosmic order, justice, and oaths. In theory. In practice, Zeus spent most of his time transforming into various animals. He seduced everything that had a pulse: swans, bulls, eagles, golden showers. This man had no sense of calm or consistent moral rules. Imagine the Chief Justice of your country turning into a goose to flirt with citizens. That's Zeus, but with a lot more lightning. His personal life was a disaster for everyone involved. He married his sister Hera. Things went exactly as one might expect. He had dozens of affairs with goddesses, nymphs, mortals, and possibly one or two houseplants. As a result, a huge number of demigod children were born. Many of them had serious issues because their parents abandoned them. They accidentally founded entire mythologies. But despite all this, Zeus was not completely chaotic. When he wasn't cheating or throwing lightning at mortals who didn't offer proper sacrifices, he really acted as a cosmic judge. He ensured oaths were kept, upheld the law, and sometimes punished people for being more arrogant than he was himself, which honestly took effort. Zeus was respected, feared, and constantly created problems for Olympus. He had power, influence, and zero understanding of personal space. He was both a protector and a predator, a judge and a joke, the greatest divine contradiction. Hera is technically the goddess of marriage, family, and childbirth. This is funny because her own marriage is a real fire in a golden chariot. She is Zeus's wife and also his sister because, well, mythology. Their wedding was supposed to be the divine ideal of a sacred union. Instead, it turned into a centuries-long soap opera filled with infidelity, revenge, and a shocking number of people turned into animals, trees, or stone. Hera is powerful. She is the undisputed queen of the gods, but her power mostly manifests in one very specific way: revenge. Of course, not on Zeus. No, that would be too simple. Hera's wrath is precisely directed at the women Zeus seduced, or, let's be honest, openly kidnapped, and their unfortunate children. Once she turned a woman into a cow, cursed another to speak only in echoes, and in one particularly cruel moment tried to kill baby Heracles with a pair of snakes. It was literally his child. Hers? No, still his. It's hard to blame her completely. Imagine being the goddess of marriage while your husband invents new forms of flirting using animals. But still, Her divine ways of coping often included eternal curses and elaborate punishments. In ancient Greece, there was no psychotherapy, so revenge was the next best option. Nevertheless, despite all this, Hera was not just a heavenly avenger. She also protected women in childbirth, supported the sanctity of marriage, theoretically, and punished mortals who broke oaths. She had temples, priests, and a devoted cult. Cities like Argos and Samos worshipped her as the main force of divine order.
In short, Hera was the goddess you prayed to when your husband was faithful, and the one who probably sent a plague when he wasn't. She is a fascinating paradox, the embodiment of feminine dignity and strength in a system that constantly humiliated her. Her story is not only about jealousy. It is the story of a woman who was supposed to symbolize unity while holding Olympus together with pure spite and decorative fury. Poseidon was the god of the sea, earthquakes, storms, and for some reason horses, because nothing says god of the ocean like a herd of galloping stallions. But hey, mythology. He was one of the three main brothers. Zeus got the sky, Hades got the underworld, and Poseidon got everything wet, which suited him just fine. He ruled the vast oceans, commanded beautiful and nightmarish sea creatures, and wielded a massive trident. This wasn't just a fancy fork, it was a three-pronged divine staff of fury capable of leveling entire cities.
Poseidon was revered and feared in equal measure. Sailors prayed to him for safe voyages, fishermen made offerings, city builders asked his permission before constructing anything too close to the shoreline, lest it accidentally become beach property. But let's be honest, Poseidon had issues. Big emotional issues the size of a tidal wave. He was the classic unpredictable uncle, sometimes generous, sometimes destructive, always a bit salty. In one moment he would create islands, and in the next he would flood your crops because someone forgot to thank him during a goat sacrifice ceremony. Once he struck the ground so hard with his trident that he caused an earthquake simply because he lost a contest to Athena for naming a city. Seriously, she gave Athens an olive tree. He offered a source of salty water. The people chose olives. He chose revenge. That's Poseidon in a nutshell. He also had a rather complicated personal life. There were nymphs, mortals, and even one incident with Medusa that ended with her getting snake hair and the label of monster, while he walked away without consequences. Classic. Despite all this, Poseidon was not just a rowdy brute. He was the protector of sailors, the builder of cities, and in his calmer moments, the god of prosperity and fertility. He was important to ancient Greek life, especially for a culture so dependent on the sea. But like the ocean itself, he was always one storm away from reminding everyone who was really in charge. Hades is the god of the underworld, not quite hell, but a vast, gloomy realm where all souls eventually go for eternity. Contrary to modern pop culture, Hades was not evil. He wasn't even particularly cruel. He was just incredibly tired of everyone. While Zeus got the sky and Poseidon the seas, Hades drew the short straw and got stuck managing the ancient Greek version of customer support for the dead for eternity in the dark, surrounded by wailing. Hades ruled the underworld with quiet, thoughtful power. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, he didn't hurl lightning or crash weddings. He simply showed up for work every day. He managed the organization of eternity and made sure souls didn't sneak out the back door. A true middle management goth workaholic among the gods. Now about Persephone. Yes, he kidnapped her. Not great, definitely problematic, but also Greek mythology. If it's not inconsistent, then it's nothing. They actually grew into a functional and strangely stable marriage. She spent half the year with him, bringing life to the underworld, and the other half on Earth,
causing spring. It was less romance, more mythological timeshare. Hades was also the first pet dad. His stock Cerberus had 3 heads, a bad temper and 0 training, but he mostly kept the souls in line. Unlike his brothers, Hades didn't cheat, rage, or crave attention. Probably why the ancient Greeks rarely built him temples. They were afraid of attracting his notice. He was the quiet, gloomy uncle you didn't invite to the party, but still respected from a safe, polite distance. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, military strategy, crafts, and the ability to be 10 steps ahead of everyone without even trying. She was essentially the divine embodiment of logic in a world full of emotional wrecks with lightning bolts. Just her birth alone could give Freud nightmares. Zeus swallowed her pregnant mother Metis because of a prophecy. As a result, he got a headache. Instead of aspirin, he got a hammer to the skull, and out sprang Athena, fully grown, in armor, and completely unimpressed by anyone. From day one, Athena made it clear she was not here for nonsense. Unlike her warlike brother Ares, Athena viewed conflict as a chessboard, something to analyze, control, and win, with minimal screaming and maximum efficiency. If Ares was a chaotic bar fight, Athena was the war room with spreadsheets. She was also the goddess of crafts. This might seem out of place until you realize that weaving in her hands was a battlefield. Just ask Arachne, the mortal who dared to challenge Athena in a weaving contest. Arachne technically won, but then she was turned into a spider for being too talented. The moral of the story? Be humble, or enjoy your new life in the corner of someone's ceiling. Athena completely avoided romance. Unlike the rest of Olympus, she didn't seduce mortals, didn't marry her brother, and didn't turn into questionable animals. She simply had things to do. Cities to protect, heroes to advise, owls to raise. She guided Odysseus home, helped Perseus behead Medusa, and probably edited the Iliad with a red pen. Athena is the goddess you would want on your team in a debate, in a war council, or running your startup. She doesn't yell, she doesn't scheme, she simply outsmarts everyone. Ares was the Greek god of war, bloodshed, and the philosophy of hit first and never think. If Athena was war with a plan, Ares was war with a sledgehammer and poor impulse control. He represented the raw, brutal chaos of battle, the part where screaming men throw themselves at each other and no one really understands what's happening except that everything is burning and someone just lost a helmet. In short, if Ares shows up, it's going to be loud, brutal, and very disorganized. By nature, he was not the most beloved guest on Olympus. Even his fellow gods didn't like him. Zeus once called him the most hated of all gods, and you know you've done something when Zeus calls you a problem. Ares was arrogant, hot-tempered, and about as refined as a burning chariot. He was also not particularly respected. The Greeks admired strategy, restraint, and intelligence, things others consistently failed to provide. He didn't win battles with tactics, he just burst in swinging weapons. This sometimes worked, but more often left a trail of dead bodies and deeply irritated allies. Nevertheless, Ares was still terrifying. He was literally the god of fear. His sons were named Phobos and Deimos, panic and terror, and he loved being in the thick of the fight. He also had a romance with Aphrodite. This sounds romantic until you remember it ended with her husband Hephaestus catching them in an invisible net while the entire pantheon laughed. Ancient Greek tabloids were thrilled. In Roman mythology, Ares transformed into Mars. He became more disciplined, more noble, less sweaty. But in Greece, he remained the chaotic, muscular embodiment of violence. Still, Ares had his moments. During actual war, he was feared and honored. Warriors made sacrifices to him, hoping he would give them strength, or at least ignore them for a while. And when he wasn't breaking things, he rode a cool chariot pulled by fire-breathing horses, which earns him at least 1 point for style. Aphrodite was the goddess of love, beauty, desire, and romantic disasters with a very high body count. If you've ever seen someone fall too quickly for the wrong person, congratulations, you've witnessed the divine influence of Aphrodite. There are 2 stories of her origin, depending on how much trauma you can handle. In one version, she is the daughter of Zeus and Dione. In the older and frankly stranger version, she was born from sea foam. The foam formed when Cronus cut off Uranus's divine parts and threw them into the ocean. Yes, this is probably the least romantic origin ever attributed to the goddess of romance. Aphrodite was so overwhelmingly beautiful that mortals and gods lost the ability to make good decisions in her presence. She had a real magic girdle called the cestus that made her irresistible to anyone, which is honestly a bit of an unfair advantage in love affairs. Despite being the embodiment of desire, Aphrodite's own personal life was complicated. She was married to Hephaestus, the hard-working god of fire and blacksmithing, but she famously preferred the company of Ares, the god of war, which tells you everything you need to know about her taste in men. Their affair was exposed when Hephaestus caught them in the act in a golden net and invited the other gods to watch. Ancient Greece, where revenge and public humiliation were considered excellent solutions to conflicts. But Aphrodite was not only chaos and cheating, she had a softer side too. She helped young lovers, presided over weddings, and brought beauty into the world. She was the goddess people prayed to before confessing a crush or trying to charm their way out of some foolishness. Still, she didn't shy away from starting wars. It was she who offered Helen of Troy to Paris, which provoked the Trojan War. Why? Because she wanted to win a divine beauty contest. Yes, really. An entire civilization burned because Aphrodite wanted a golden apple labeled "for the fairest." She is the goddess of desire, not stability. Beautiful, intoxicating, and absolutely uninterested in your relationship boundaries. Hephaestus was the god of fire, metalworking, craftsmanship, and the only Olympian who actually had a job. While the other gods were busy starting wars, chasing mortals, or throwing lightning like confetti, Hephaestus was in his workshop. He forged weapons, built palaces, and muttered to himself. His origin story varies, but none of them are pleasant. In one version, he is born with a defect, and Hera, disgusted by his appearance, throws him off Mount Olympus like unwanted baggage. In another, Zeus does the same after a family argument. Either way, the guy falls from the heavens, hits hard, and ends up with a permanent limp and probably abandonment issues the size of a script. Despite a difficult start, Hephaestus returns to Olympus not through forgiveness, but through blackmail. He creates a magical golden throne for Hera that suddenly traps her. The gods beg him to return and free her. He agrees, but only if they accept him back into the divine club. Negotiations succeeded. Now back on Olympus, Hephaestus becomes the divine handyman. He forges Zeus's lightning bolts, Poseidon's trident, Achilles' armor, and practically every magical item anyone brags about. If something glows, flies, or explodes, Hephaestus probably made it, working overtime without pay. And yet, for all his genius, he was constantly disrespected. His wife Aphrodite, assigned rather than chosen, famously cheated on him with Ares. His family was emotionally distant, to put it mildly. His colleagues constantly broke things he had just fixed. But Hephaestus never lost his temper like Ares or schemed like Hera. His revenge was creative, elegant, and passive-aggressive. Even the net he used to catch Aphrodite and Ares in the middle of their affair was masterfully made and designed for maximum public humiliation. Practical and poetic. He is not glamorous, he doesn't sparkle, but he is the god who literally built Olympus. Hephaestus is the unsung hero, the working-class deity among the gods, patron of blacksmiths, craftsmen, inventors, and everyone who has ever yelled at a broken machine and then fixed it with tape and rage. Hermes is the god of travelers, trade, thieves, messages, and suspiciously fast speech. This is the guy with winged sandals, a staff that probably came without instructions, and energy that screams, "I already ate 3 olives and lied twice today." Unlike most gods, Hermes started acting from the moment of his birth. Literally, on the day he was born, he crawled out of the cradle, stole Apollo's kettle, invented the lyre from a tortoise shell, and then returned to his cradle before anyone noticed. That was his first day. Most gods need centuries to cause that much chaos. Hermes needed about 6 hours. He is known as the messenger of the gods, but that's an understatement. He didn't just deliver messages, he secretly transported souls to the underworld, guided heroes through enemy territory, and probably invented the divine version of express delivery. If there was trouble, Hermes was already 2 steps ahead, leaving behind a suspiciously vague alibi and a charming smile. He also served as the god of trade and commerce because nothing says reliable market energy like the same guy who oversees theft. Hermes represented negotiation, persuasion, and morally flexible entrepreneurship, mainly the patron of merchants, travelers, pickpockets, and everyone who has ever haggled at a flea market. But he was not just a charming rogue. Hermes was loyal when it mattered. He helped Odysseus outsmart Circe. He gave Perseus tools to behead Medusa. He even escorted souls to the underworld with surprising tenderness, proving that beneath all the mischief, he had a job he took seriously. Hermes also had his signature accessory, the caduceus, this winged staff with 2 intertwined snakes. It is often confused with the symbol of medicine, which is ironic given that Hermes's main qualities were speed, lying, and professional boundary violation. If Olympus had an IT department, Hermes would be the overexcited tech guy who speaks in abbreviations, solves your problems in 2 minutes, and then disappears to optimize cloud functions, which may or may not include stealing Zeus's wallet. He is smart, fast, unreliable, and very cute. The god who does everything, gets away with it, and doesn't answer follow-up questions. Demeter is the goddess of the harvest, agriculture, grain, and the one who gives life to the world, when she's in the mood. When Demeter is happy, the harvest prospers, trees bear fruit, and the world blooms in abundance. When she is upset, well, hello winter, famine, and general withering disappointment. She is one of the quieter Olympians. She doesn't throw lightning, doesn't start wars, doesn't turn people into animals. But don't mistake silence for harmlessness. She can stop food supplies to the planet with one bad mood, which, as it turned out, she did. Enter Persephone, her beloved daughter, literally the flower child of Olympus. One day, Persephone was picking flowers, minding her own mythological business, when the earth split open and Hades, the god of the underworld and professional kidnapper, burst in and abducted her. Classic Greek parental crisis. Demeter, quite understandably, goes mad. She searches for her across the earth in grief, refusing to let anything grow until her daughter returns. Crops die, animals starve, mortals beg for mercy. Demeter's answer: no Persephone, no produce. Eventually Zeus intervenes, mostly because people are dying and no one is bringing sacrifices. A deal is made. Persephone will spend part of the year with Hades and part with Demeter. And thus the seasons are born. Spring and summer, Demeter is happy. Autumn and winter, she sulks. So yes, one of the most important natural cycles in human existence comes from Demeter's seasonal mood swings. World agriculture is fed by maternal grief and emotional blackmail. Mythology at its best. Demeter also had a strong sense of justice. Once she taught people how to grow wheat and build civilizations. Then she turned around and burned a royal infant because the parents interrupted her in the middle of a ritual. It's a fine line between the goddess of life and a terrifying earthly witch.
But at her core, Demeter represents care, resilience, and the sacred bond between mother and child. She gives life from the earth and just as easily takes it away. Dionysus is the god of wine, revelry, fertility, theater, madness, and those questionable decisions you make after the third glass of whatever he's pouring. He is the divine embodiment of the principle, live only once, wrapped in ivy, slightly drunk, and possibly summoning a panther. Dionysus was born under very dramatic circumstances. He started life as the child of Zeus and the mortal woman Semele. When Hera found out about this, because of course she did, she tricked Semele into asking Zeus to show his true divine form. Spoiler, it vaporized her. Zeus, always solving problems, sewed the unborn Dionysus into his thigh and carried him to term. Greek mythology, where nothing is strange enough to question. Dionysus grew up wandering the earth, spreading winemaking, chaotic joy, and mild existential dread. He was accompanied by a noisy entourage of satyrs, maenads, and forest partygoers. It was a mobile circus of ecstasy and potential property damage. His worship was not only about fun and grapes. Dionysus's rituals included abandoning one's identity, inhibitions, and sometimes one's clothing. His festivals were wild, captivating, and often involved masks, theater, and very questionable decisions under the stars. Imagine the Burning Man festival, but with divine consequences. But Dionysus was not only fun and fermented joy, he had a very theatrical character. If you laughed at him, refused his cult, or disrupted his vibe, things got weird. One king who banned his cult was driven mad, and his own people tore him apart. Another was turned into a dolphin. He didn't punish lightly, he punished demonstratively. Nevertheless, he was also deeply compassionate, especially toward outcasts, losers, and those outside decent society. He gave comfort to the broken, voice to the silent, and sometimes turned people into grapevines, which probably symbolizes something. Dionysus is the paradox of divine liberation and chaos. He is joy and destruction, art and madness. A god who in one moment blesses you with creativity and in the next makes you dance barefoot on a vineyard and question your life choices. Artemis is the goddess of the hunt, wilderness, wild animals, and the moon. She is also the goddess of the answer. No, I will not explain myself. And yes, that was a threat, often depicted with a bow in one hand and zero tolerance in the other. Artemis is one of the few Olympians who didn't need lightning or love potions. She had precision, discipline, and a pack of divine wolves. The twin sister of Apollo, Artemis was born in the typical overachiever manner. She helped deliver her brother shortly after her own birth. From that moment, she was done with men. She rejected marriage, romance, and anything that remotely resembled emotional vulnerability. Instead, she roamed the forests, hunted deer, and surrounded herself with a loyal group of virgin followers who all shared her love of nature and indifference to drama. Artemis is most famous for her purity, not in the Victorian fainting sense, but rather in the "touch me and I'll turn you into a deer" sense. Take, for example, Actaeon, the hunter, who accidentally stumbled upon her while she was bathing. Instead of calmly explaining boundaries, she turned him into a deer and let his own dogs tear him apart.
Message received. She was fiercely protective, especially of women and children. While many Olympian gods treated mortals like chess pieces or dating apps, Artemis acted as a divine advocate for the vulnerable. She punished those who did not respect sacred nature or harmed the innocent, and her revenge was swift, poetic, and usually lethal. As the goddess of the moon, she represented calm, clarity, and mystery. She brought light to the nights and guided travelers through darkness, both metaphorically and literally. If Apollo was the blinding glare of the sun, then Artemis was the cold, focused gaze of the moon. Less warmth, more vigilance. She wasn't flashy, but she didn't need to be. Artemis had presence. You didn't challenge her, you didn't flirt with her, you simply hoped she wasn't aiming in your direction. In modern terms, Artemis is the first independent woman, fierce, free, and completely uninterested in your opinion of her. She didn't live on Olympus. She ran through the forests. Apollo, god of the sun, music, prophecy, healing, poetry, archery, and honestly, at this point, just assume he applied for every job opening on Mount Olympus. If the gods had a LinkedIn profile, Apollo would have crashed the site. The twin brother of Artemis, Apollo is the shining, radiant specimen of Olympus.
Golden hair, golden lyre, golden chariot. He is the reason we have daylight. According to Greek myth, he literally drove the sun across the sky every day in a blazing chariot. No rush if you're late, but beneath all that shine lies a lot of feelings. Apollo is dramatic, he is emotional. He's the guy who sings ballads after a breakup and then curses the person who rejected him. Literally. Just ask Daphne. She turned into a tree just to get away from him. Apollo mourned her loss, then turned her into a sacred symbol and wore her leaves as a crown. Because that's healthy. He is also the god of prophecy, which means he technically knows everything will end badly and still gets upset when it happens. Classic overachiever energy. He founded the Delphic oracle, where priestesses under the influence of divine madness muttered poetic readers that somehow explained everyone's fate. Very user-friendly. Apollo had complicated relationships with love. He pursued several mortals. Most rejected him, and he reacted with varying degrees of poetic exaggeration. When the Spartan prince Hyacinthus died during a discus game, possibly from Apollo's own poorly thrown disc, he was so upset that he turned the boy into a flower. Sweet, if you ignore the blunt trauma part. Despite all this, Apollo was also a healer. His son, Asclepius, became the god of medicine, and Apollo himself could cure plagues, or cause them, depending on how offended he was that day. In short, Apollo was brilliance wrapped in insecurity, power dressed in poetry, and charm with a short fuse. The kind of god who would write you a love song and then shoot you with an arrow if you didn't applaud. Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, home, and domestic peace, which in ancient Greek means the only Olympian who didn't cause weekly international incidents. She was the eldest child of Cronus and Rhea, and also the first one her charmingly paranoid father swallowed whole. Later, she was the last one he regurgitated when Zeus overthrew him, which technically makes her both the oldest and youngest Olympian. Yes, Greek mythology is a crooked mirror of logic. Unlike her more chaotic brothers and sisters, Hestia chose peace. She didn't participate in power struggles, didn't cast curses, didn't sleep with mortals, and didn't even snark. She was offered a throne on Olympus. She politely shrugged and gave it to Dionysus. Why? So she could tend the eternal fire and not get involved in family drama. Queen behavior. She oversaw the hearth, the center of every home, temple, and city.
Wherever fire burned for warmth, food, or ritual, Hestia was there spiritually. No temples in her honor, no scandalous myths, just a quiet presence that made everything else work. Originally indispensable, but important, she was also the goddess of hospitality. In a world where bread and blood meant survival, she represented the sacred duty of caring for guests. Invoking her meant your fire would burn, your bread wouldn't burn, and hopefully your relatives would leave on time. And unlike most Olympians, she didn't go around turning people into animals, inanimate objects, or ironic moral lessons. Hestia didn't need revenge. She had a well-swept floor and inner peace. Thanks to her, every meal began and ended with an offering. In the heart of every city burned her fire. And in every prayer circle, someone probably whispered, "Thank you for not causing problems." If the gods were a dysfunctional office, Zeus would be the CEO with boundary issues, Athena the overqualified strategist, Dionysus the labor code violator, and Hestia would be the calm office manager who keeps the coffee warm and the lights on, while everyone else argues about whose temple is on fire. Hestia reminds us that there is strength in silence, value in simplicity, and sometimes the most important figure is the one who doesn't demand attention but holds everything together. Persephone is one of the most fascinating figures in Greek mythology. A goddess with a split personality literally written into the seasons. She is the blooming of spring and the cold of death, life and decay, a flower wreath and an iron throne. She is the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, which already places her in the realm of life and fertility. But then everything changed, as it often does in Greek myths, when Hades, the ruler of the underworld, saw her picking flowers and decided she was wife material. He abducted her straight into the underworld, no discussion, no coffee first. Demeter, naturally, was devastated. She searched the earth, and when no one told her where Persephone had gone, she completely stopped agriculture. The result? Global famine and an angry crowd of hungry mortals. Eventually, Zeus intervened, not out of fatherly care, but because no one was bringing sacrifices while starving. A compromise was reached. Persephone could return if she had eaten nothing in the underworld, which of course she had. 6 pomegranate seeds, just enough to legally bind her to a part-time job in the land of the dead. Thus began her dual role, half the year on earth with Demeter, bringing spring and summer, the other half with Hades, giving us autumn and winter. The ancient Greeks invented seasonal depression with a myth. But here's where it gets interesting. Over time, Persephone embraced her role as queen of the dead. She was not just a sad, kidnapped flower girl. She became a ruler, calm, firm, and quietly powerful. Mortals prayed to her for mercy, for a safe passage, for understanding the balance between life and death. She represents transformation, not only seasonal, but emotional. The transition from innocence to strength, from being taken to taking control. Persephone is the goddess of duality. She walks among flowers and bones with equal grace. She is the reason flowers bloom and the reason they wither. Even before Psyche was old enough to understand the word goddess, she was already being compared to one. By the time she reached adulthood, statues of Aphrodite were gathering dust, while mortals traveled miles just to look at the face of this mortal girl. Her beauty was not just admired, it was worshipped. Entire crowds treated her as if she were Aphrodite incarnate in flesh and blood. People whispered that she must be divine, that no mortal woman could look so accidentally perfect. But for Psyche, all this reverence felt empty. She walked through cities and villages like a ghost, adored but untouched, glorified but lonely. No one dared approach her with true affection. Men looked at her like a living painting, flawless, silent, untouchable. Even her family, though proud, grew uneasy. Her two sisters married noble men, created families, and lived the warm earthly life that Psyche herself so desperately craved. But no suitor dared court the girl who was considered Aphrodite's rival. And therein lay the danger. You see, the gods did not like competition, especially Aphrodite. Watching her temples empty while mortals laid wreaths at the feet of a simple girl made the goddess burn with divine fury. To her, Psyche was not a beautiful child. She was an insult carved in flesh. However, Psyche knew nothing of this. She spent her days walking alone in gardens, speaking to no one. She had never felt the touch of a lover or heard the whisper of a vow in the darkness. Her beauty had become a curse that distanced her from the only thing she truly wanted, a soul that would see her, not just her face. She stood at the window at dusk, watching the horizon fade, thinking, perhaps this is her fate, to be loved by everyone, but belong to no one. No priest, no oracle, no stranger ever offered an answer, until one day someone did. But it was not a man, it was not a priest, and it was not a mortal. It was a goddess. And she was not offering love. She was demanding revenge. On Mount Olympus, beauty was more than vanity. It was power, and no one owned it like Aphrodite. She was the goddess of desire, seduction, divine charm. But lately, her temples echoed with emptiness. Her statue stood alone under the sun. Why? Because mortals now knelt before the human girl Psyche as if she were the new goddess of love. For Aphrodite, this was not merely insulting, it was treason. The goddess watched from her heavenly throne. Her envy turned to hatred. She destroyed kings for less. How dare a mortal girl steal her worshippers? How dare she exist as a living insult to divine beauty? So Aphrodite did what goddesses do. She summoned her son Eros. Now Eros was not just any deity, he was the god of love, yes, but not the soft, tender love mortals wrote poems about. No, Eros dealt in chaos. He ignited passion where it shouldn't be. He made kings fall for rogues, queens for slaves, enemies for each other. His arrows didn't ask permission. They destroyed logic, loyalty, and sometimes entire empires. Aphrodite's order was simple. Make Psyche fall in love with the ugliest, most vile creature on earth. Something monstrous, something even lower than worms. Let her feel what it's like to be mocked by love. Eros, always the obedient son, agreed. Bow slung over his back, quiver full of divine arrows, he descended to the mortal world under the cover of moonlight. He found Psyche sleeping in her chamber. Candlelight flickered on her features like water. She was beautiful, too beautiful. And Eros, who had pierced 1,000 hearts, felt his own skip a beat. This was wrong. This was not part of the plan. Still, he reached for his arrow. But in his distraction, something went wrong. His hand slipped, the arrow pricked his own skin. Just a drop, but it was enough. The god of love had just become a victim of his own power. And in that moment, fate changed. For Eros would no longer be his mother's weapon. He would be Psyche's silent protector. But neither of them knew what price the gods would demand for this forbidden love. And Aphrodite would not forgive betrayal. Eros disappeared before Psyche could wake. The wound from his own arrow was still warm on his skin. He had pierced countless hearts, but had never once fallen victim to his own game. Now, with every heartbeat, he felt a longing he didn't understand. The need to protect her, to cherish her, to hide her from the cruel eyes of Olympus. But protection required sacrifices. He could not tell her the truth. If Aphrodite learned that he had disobeyed her, worse, that he had fallen in love, there would be no mercy for him or Psyche. So Eros made a quiet vow. He would love her from the shadows. Meanwhile, Psyche's life was becoming stranger. With each passing day, suitors stopped coming. Her beauty, once a spectacle, now seemed cursed. Rumors of divine punishment spread through the kingdom. Her father, desperate and frightened, consulted Apollo's oracle, and the words that returned were cruel. She would not marry a mortal man. Instead, she would marry a monster, a beast feared even by the gods. Send her to the top of the mountain, dressed as a bride. There, her fate awaits. Her family wept, her sisters gasped, but Psyche stood motionless, silent, as if the wind had carved her from stone. A monster. This was her fate. Not love, not choice, but sacrifice. Yet she agreed not out of courage, but out of resignation. She had been adored as a goddess, but never touched by love. Perhaps this cruel, monstrous fate was simply balance. Eros watched from above, his heart clenched with guilt. He wanted to protect her, but now the gods had woven a web he could not untangle. If he intervened openly, his mother would know. But if he did nothing, Psyche would be lost. So he devised a plan. He would take her to a secret place, a hidden palace known only to him, shrouded in illusion and silence. He would love her not as a god, but as a shadow. He would never show his face, never speak his name. And above all, he would never tell her the truth. Because if she knew who he was, everything would be destroyed. Even the god of love feared a broken heart. The wind was soft but strong as it carried Psyche from the mountaintop. She expected cold stone and gnashing teeth. She prepared herself for the monster's cave, but instead there was silence, gentle, surreal silence. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer on the mountain. She stood in a meadow of glowing flowers, more radiant than any garden she had ever known. A path of polished stone wound through the field, leading to something impossible. A palace, more majestic than anything human hands could build. Its columns shimmered like moonlight on water. Its halls whispered her name without sound. Psyche crossed the threshold, expecting fear, but finding peace. Invisible servants guided her hands, washed her feet, dressed her in fine clothes. Food appeared warm and fragrant, though no one set the table. At night, a voice, deep, gentle and kind, spoke from the shadows. Do not be afraid. You are safe. This is your home. It was him, her invisible husband, the one the oracle had promised. But there was no growling beast, no monstrous form, only a voice. And strangely, he did not frighten her. He never showed himself, even in darkness. Every night, he joined her in the quiet velvet of the bedroom. He touched her face like a dream. He whispered laughter in her ear. And every morning, he left before sunrise. She quickly fell in love. Love without sight, intimacy without form. Every word he spoke made her crave more. But the one thing he always begged was this: never try to see me. One day, she asked gently, "Why?" The voice tensed. "If you see me, I will have to leave you forever." And so she obeyed, but the mystery grew heavier with each day. How could such a kind, thoughtful person be the monster the oracle had warned about? Why must love hide its face? And why, when she whispered her name, did he never whisper his? Psyche told herself it didn't matter, that she didn't need to know. But the human heart is a curious thing, and seeds of doubt, once planted, never stay buried for long. Especially when family comes to visit, and especially when sisters bring poison disguised as love. Weeks, perhaps months, passed. Time flowed strangely in the invisible palace.
Psyche knew peace, laughter, luxury and love, but she also knew isolation. No faces, no names, no truth. Only a voice in the darkness and shadows that kissed her lips. Then one morning, her husband's voice was different. "Sorrow will follow if you see them," he said. "See whom?" "Your sisters. They come out of love, but what they bring is ruin." Psyche's heart cracked. She missed them, their teasing, their warmth, even their jealousy. They were her last connection to the mortal world, to the girl she had been before gods, palaces, and mysterious husbands. She begged, "Let me see them, please, just once." Eros hesitated, but he could never refuse her. He agreed with one warning. "Do not let their words poison what we have. They will try to destroy your trust. You must not listen." And so the winds that once lifted Psyche brought her sisters to the garden gates of the invisible palace. When they saw her, they were stunned. She was alive, more than alive, radiant, dressed in silks finer than any queen's. Her skin glowed like starlight. They embraced her, laughing nervously, hiding their envy behind fragile smiles. "Where is your husband?" asked one. Psyche smiled. "He comes only at night. I have never seen him." The sisters froze. "You have never seen him?" She nodded. "He does not allow you to see his face." The other gasped. "What if he is ugly, a beast, or worse? What if he is one of the gods using you and laughing behind your back?" Their voices oozed sweet concern, but Psyche felt the shift. Old sisterly rivalry was still there, now twisted into something darker. Jealousy sharpened their words. "He keeps you in secrecy, blind, dependent. Is this love or imprisonment?" The seed of doubt was planted. They saw it take root, and they smiled. As they left, they kissed her cheeks and whispered, "Just take a lamp one night. Look for yourself. If he loves you, what harm can the truth do?" Psyche watched them disappear on the wind, and for the first time since arriving in paradise, she could not stop trembling from fear or from curiosity. That night, Psyche could not sleep. She lay in the darkness, wrapped in silk sheets. His arms gently embraced her. His breathing was steady beside her, but her mind was loud, louder than his heart, louder than love. Her sister's words repeated like spells. "What if he is a monster? What if he is using you? What if he is not who you think he is?" She had trusted blindly. She had fully surrendered to the voice in the darkness. But was this love or simply surrender? She slipped out of bed silently like snowfall. Her bare feet touched the cold floor, and in her hand she held a small bronze oil lamp. Its wick was already burning. Her heart pounded in her chest as she approached. Her fingers trembled as she leaned over, and when the light touched his face, she gasped. No monster, no god in disguise. A man more beautiful than words. Golden curls tangled on the pillow, soft lips curved in sleep, and on his back, wings, feathered, divine, folded like a secret. It was Eros, the god of love, and he had chosen her. Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of guilt. He had trusted her, warned her, loved her, and she had doubted. She leaned closer, wanting to kiss his lips, whisper apologies before the light vanished. But fate is cruel.
One drop of hot oil spilled from the lamp and touched his bare shoulder. He woke with a cry of pain and betrayal. His wings spread wide, his eyes wide with grief. "You broke your promise," he said, his voice full of emptiness. "You trusted fear more than love." "Forgive me," whispered Psyche, falling to her knees. "I just wanted to know." Eros stepped back, his glow dimming. "Now you know." And with those words, he disappeared into the darkness. The palace collapsed behind him. The invisible world they had shared vanished like smoke. Psyche was left alone on a barren hillside, the lamp still warm in her hand and her heart broken. She had seen the god of love and lost him, not by fate, but by doubt. Psyche wandered barefoot and broken through a world that suddenly seemed colder. The lush gardens, silk halls, the voice that once lulled her, all gone. The sky gave no answers, the earth gave no comfort. Only her regret remained. Every step was heavy with grief. She called for Eros in the forests, in the fields, in the rivers, even in her dreams. But there was no answer. The god of love had disappeared not from Olympus, but from her life. In despair, Psyche returned to her father's house. But the palace that once cherished her now whispered with rumors. Her sisters, triumphant in her misfortune, claimed she had married a demon and lost everything. No one believed her story of love, gods, and winged husbands. So she left again. This time, not in exile, but with purpose. She would find Eros, no matter how far she had to go.
No matter what anger she had to face, even if it meant entering Olympus itself. But mortals do not simply enter heaven, so she sought the only one who could guide her path. The one who had started it all. Aphrodite. Yes, Psyche was afraid. The goddess had reason to hate her, but if Eros still loved her, if there was even the slightest hope, then Psyche would face even the wrath of Olympus to earn redemption. She found Aphrodite not in a golden temple, but in a private garden, surrounded by mirrors. The goddess was looking at her reflection as if searching for flaws that weren't there. When Psyche approached, Aphrodite did not turn. "I warned you once," the goddess said coldly, "and still you touched what was mine." Psyche knelt. "I love him." Aphrodite laughed. "You love him? You mean the son you betrayed, the god you doubted?" "I was foolish," admitted Psyche, "but I will do anything to regain his trust." Aphrodite turned. Her eyes were sharp as blades. "Anything?" Psyche nodded. The goddess smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "Then you will suffer, you will be tested, and perhaps at the end of your torments, you will be worthy of my son." Thus began the trial, not of strength, but of devotion, and Psyche had to endure it alone. Aphrodite wasted no time. Her beauty was legendary, but her cruelty when provoked was equally divine. If Psyche wanted any chance to see Eros again, she would have to prove her worth through a series of impossible tasks. The first assignment was deceptively simple. Aphrodite led her to a huge storeroom where mountains of seeds were scattered across the floor. Barley, millet, lentils, poppy, wheat, and beans, all mixed in indistinguishable chaos. By nightfall, Aphrodite said, yawning, "Sort them, every grain, every seed into its own pile. If you fail, you will never see my son again." Then she left, humming to herself. Psyche stared at the impossible task,
even 1,000 hands would not be enough to sort such a mess in a day. Still, she dropped to her knees and began, picking seed by seed. Her fingers trembled, minutes stretched like hours, her eyes blurred. She had not done even a small part of the work. But the gods always watch, and so do their creatures. Unnoticed by Psyche, a line of ants observed her labor. These were not ordinary ants. They were sacred to Demeter, the goddess of the harvest. Perhaps they pitied the girl, perhaps they were moved by love. In a sudden burst of movement, hundreds of tiny legs scurried across the floor. The ants formed living rivers, sorting the seeds with astonishing precision. In minutes, the chaos turned to order. Barley in one direction, lentils in another, millet in neat pyramids. It was as if nature itself was rewriting the laws of time. When Aphrodite returned at sunset, she was met not with failure, but with perfection. She narrowed her eyes. "You received help?" she snapped. Psyche lowered her head. "I did only what I could." Aphrodite's lips twitched. There was something between anger and laughter. She had not expected the mortal girl to complete the task, much less with such grace. But it didn't matter. There were still many more trials ahead, harder, more deadly. "This was only the beginning," warned the goddess. "If you want to see Eros again, you will need more than luck." And yet Psyche, exhausted, tired, but still standing, nodded. "I will do whatever it takes, because true love is worth more than divine comfort or mortal pride." And Psyche's war had only just begun. Psyche barely had time to rest before Aphrodite gave her a second task, even more cruel in its design. "Do you see that river down there?" the goddess asked, pointing to a winding stream glistening under the midday sun. "It flows beside meadows where wild rams graze. Their wool is made of gold. Bring me a tuft of it, just a handful, but try not to die." She smirked and disappeared, leaving Psyche facing what she knew was more than a simple errand. These were unkind creatures. The golden rams were sacred, their eyes wild and their horns sharp as spears. It was known that they would gore anything that entered their field, tearing intruders apart without warning. They sparkled like treasure, but guarded it with fury. Yet Psyche descended the hill and approached the field. She crouched by the reeds, her heart pounded. She watched the creatures wander, their hooves clattered on stones, their growls sounded low and primal. There was no way she could survive entering their territory during the day. She fell to her knees. Tears welled up. Fear clung to her resolve, but the world was watching again. A quiet whisper passed through the tall grass, a soft voice like the swaying of reeds in rhythm. It was the spirit of the river, an ancient being bound to the stream. "Do not enter while the sun is high," whispered the spirit. "The rams rage in daylight, but when twilight comes, they rest in the shade. Wait, then gather the wool caught on thorny branches where it snagged. No animal will notice you." Hope returned. Psyche waited. Hours passed. One by one, the golden rams retreated under the trees and sank into sleep. When darkness fell, she crept forward quietly, carefully, and found tufts of golden fleece tangled in blackberry bushes and bark. By moonlight, she collected the wool and returned to Aphrodite, who narrowed her eyes at the sparkling handful in Psyche's palm. "You're alive again?" muttered the goddess with curiosity. But Psyche said nothing. No pride, no gloating, just quiet strength. Because love had taught her what even the gods had forgotten. Courage grows quietly, but it endures. And though Aphrodite was not finished testing her, Psyche was far from giving up. Aphrodite grew angrier. Psyche had survived tasks that should have broken her, using only determination and strange, unwavering luck. The goddess's smile vanished, replaced by cold calculation. So for the third trial, she gave Psyche an assignment that was supposed to end her story forever. "Bring me water," she said, "not from a well, not from a stream, but from the river Styx itself." Psyche turned pale. The Styx was no ordinary river. It marked the boundary between the world of the living and the dead. Its waters were sacred, cursed, and deadly to the touch. Even gods approached it with fear. Mortals did not survive its banks. They did not even return. Yet Psyche nodded. Her path led her to the edge of a cliff so steep it seemed carved by the hands of titans. Far below, the river Styx churned like black glass, rising with vaporous curses and cries of lost souls. Its current did not flow. It writhed like a living snake. Worse, the river was guarded by monstrous winged creatures, sentinels of the underworld. They dived and screamed at anything that moved. Their claws were sharp enough to tear bone from flesh. There was no path down, no way forward, no hope. She collapsed under a rocky overhang, clutching the crystal flask Aphrodite had mockingly given her. "Just a sip," the goddess had said, "enough to show you tried." But then a shimmer appeared. A high hum filled the air, and from a crack in the stone emerged a tiny creature, an eagle, huge by bird standards, regal and golden-eyed, sent by Zeus himself, the eagle of thunder and kings. Without a word, it took the flask from Psyche's hand, spread its wings, and soared down the deadly cliff. The guards screamed, but did not dare attack, for even death respected Zeus's command. Moments later, the eagle returned, placing the sealed flask filled with the shimmering, cursed waters of the Styx into Psyche's trembling hands. She did not ask why Zeus had helped her. Perhaps Eros had once helped him. Perhaps even the gods respected the steadfastness of love. When Psyche returned to Aphrodite, the goddess accepted the flask in stony silence. Psyche had passed the trials again, but the final test would take her where even gods fear to go. And not all love stories survive the journey to the underworld. Aphrodite's voice was colder than the Styx itself. "For your final task," she said, "you will go to the realm of Hades. There, you will beg Queen Persephone for a box of her beauty. A gift, you see, for me. I feel quite tired lately. Your existence exhausts me." This was a death sentence. Even the bravest mortals avoided the underworld. The living did not enter Hades' kingdom and return. But Psyche no longer hesitated. If the path to Eros lay through darkness, then darkness would not stop her. Guided by whispers of sympathetic voices, some say Demeters, others invisible demons of kindness, she found a hidden entrance, a cave that pierced the surface of the world like a forgotten scar. She took with her 2 coins for Charon the ferryman and barley cakes for Cerberus, the 3-headed dog. Every step deeper drained the warmth from her bones. The air was thick, not with smoke, but with silence. The souls she passed floated like memories, thin, empty, and unreachable. At the river Acheron, Charon accepted her payment and ferried her across the still waters stained with forgotten grief. When Cerberus appeared, growling at the threshold of Persephone's palace, she fed him the cakes. He calmed, licking his bloody jaws. Inside, Persephone sat calmly on her obsidian throne. Her eyes were like polished garnets. "You have come for beauty," said the queen. "Not without kindness." "But at what cost? I do not want it for myself," replied Psyche. "I must deliver it to Aphrodite." Persephone nodded. Perhaps she too understood the madness of love. She handed Psyche a small sealed box, simple, unmarked, and yet unbearably heavy. "Do not open it," warned the queen. "It is not meant for your eyes." Psyche thanked her and turned to leave. The way back was quiet, but now heavier with temptation. The box pulsed in her hands. Surely one glance wouldn't hurt. She told herself no, again and again, but doubt, as before, crept inside. What if this beauty would make her worthy of Eros again? What if this was the final key? The surface was close. Her heart pounded, her fingers twitched, and when light returned to her face for the first time in days, she opened the box, and darkness swallowed her. In the moment Psyche opened the box, expecting light and beauty, a cold mist poured out like breath from a grave. It was not beauty. It was not divine radiance. It was sleep. Not ordinary sleep, but the immortal sleep of the underworld, created by Persephone to preserve her power, not to adorn Aphrodite. Psyche did not scream. She did not collapse. She simply fell. Her body softly dropped onto the grass at the edge of the mortal world, the sealed box beside her. Her limbs froze, her breathing quieted. She was not dead, but not alive, trapped in eternal pause. Her heart stopped from her own curiosity, and this might have been the end of Psyche. But love knows how to survive even after death. Far on Olympus, Eros had not forgotten her. His wounds had healed, but his heart had not. He had stayed away at his mother's command, tormented by visions of Psyche laboring through impossible trials. And when he heard she had entered the underworld, he understood she had done it for him, defying Aphrodite, boldly walking toward death. All for love. This was no mortal girl. This was a queen. Eros defied his mother, bursting from Olympus in a flash of wings and gold. He raced across the sky. Clouds parted at his heels until he found her, motionless, silent, lying like a marble statue kissed by twilight. He fell to his knees beside her and wept. Not tears of sorrow, but of rage, regret, love too great for words. He carefully lifted the box and closed it. Then, without hesitation, he leaned down and kissed her on the lips. Not a magic kiss, not a spell, just a kiss, a promise, a memory, a plea. And her eyes fluttered open. Psyche gasped. The sleep dispersed like mist. Her hands reached for him before she could even speak. "Eros," she whispered. "You returned," he whispered. "I never stopped loving you." He held her tighter than ever, and in that moment all the gods who watched, some with surprise, some with anger, finally understood. Even the god of love had met his match. Their reunion shook Olympus. Eros, the god of love, had defied his mother. Psyche, a mortal, had defied death. And together they crossed the boundaries between divine and human, between duty and desire. Such love was dangerous. Aphrodite was furious. She stormed into the court of the gods, demanding punishment. "This mortal," she screamed, "mocked the gods, interfered with sacred laws, and corrupted my son. She must be erased." But the gods were no longer so certain. They had seen Psyche's trials, seen how she suffered, persisted, and rose again. Her love had survived what no mortal love ever had. Still, the matter had to be settled, and so they turned to Zeus. The king of the gods sat silently on his throne, lightning in one hand, fate in the other. He had seen everything, from Psyche's fall to her rise, from her doubts to her devotion. Finally, he spoke. "There is power," said Zeus, "in love that endures." Aphrodite opened her mouth to object, but he raised his hand. "You tested her. She has endured more than any mortal I have ever seen. She is not unworthy of Olympus, but proof that even mortals can love like gods." Then he turned to Eros and Psyche. "You wish to be together truly, forever?" They both nodded. "Then so be it." With one wave of his hand, Zeus summoned a cup filled with ambrosia, the drink of the gods. He offered it to Psyche. "Drink, and you will no longer be mortal. Your heart will beat with eternity. Your soul will live among us, but your trials will not be erased. You will carry them, as we all carry the stories that shape us." Psyche took the cup. Her hands did not tremble. She drank. Warmth spread through her, not burning but blooming. Her senses expanded. Her heartbeat slowed, then deepened like a bell ringing through centuries. And so she became divine, no longer mortal, no longer lesser. Eros took her hand, and before all Olympus, they were declared husband and wife. Love, this time, did not end in tragedy. It was crowned in the moment Psyche drank the ambrosia. The transformation was complete, not only in body but in spirit. Her skin shimmered with divine radiance. Her eyes now held galaxies, not tears. The gods who had once laughed at her mortal blood now looked on with awe. For the first time in long memory, a mortal had earned her place among them, not by blood, but by devotion. She was no longer Psyche the girl or Psyche the beautiful. Now she was Psyche the immortal, a goddess in her own right. Even Aphrodite, who had once cursed her, could no longer deny what stood before her. A woman who had faced death, temptation, betrayal, and loneliness, and still chose love over pride. Yet, the goddess of love was in no hurry to forgive. But Eros, always his mother's son, and at the same time Psyche's fierce husband, stepped forward. "She is not a rival to your beauty, mother," he said softly. "She is something quite different, a soul that understands love." And in that moment, the tension melted, not completely, but enough. Aphrodite's silence was her surrender. Zeus proclaimed her the goddess of the soul. Psyche, whose very name in Greek meant both soul and breath of life. Her trials had shaped her not into a statue of perfection, but into the embodiment of what love endures. A great feast was held on Olympus. Nectar flowed like rivers, stars danced in honor of the celebration, and even the fates smiled at the story they had once whispered. Psyche stood beside Eros, no longer uncertain or afraid. She was an equal. She was divine. Together they watched the sky above and the mortal world below, guardians of love and the soul's journey. And from their union was born a daughter, Hedone, the goddess of pleasure and delight, a symbol of joy born from the union of love and soul. Where once Psyche had walked among thorns and shadows, now she danced in eternal light. Not because she was perfect, but because she loved, fell, suffered, and rose again. She was proof that even mortals, even with broken hearts, can reach the heavens, one trial at a time. And so the story of Eros and Psyche did not end in tragedy like so many mortal loves, but in transformation, not into myth, but into something much greater. A truth whispered through the ages, from temples to bedrooms, from storytellers to dreamers. Love, true love, is not easy. It is tested, it is doubted, it is wounded, but when it endures, it becomes eternal. Psyche's journey began with beauty, a curse she never asked for. She was worshipped by strangers, envied by sisters, manipulated by gods. She was punished for being loved, then punished again for loving in return. And yet, she never stopped trying. Even when her heart broke, even when her faith cracked, she kept going. And Eros, the god of love, he too learned that love is not a weapon, not a game, not a secret in the shadows. It is light. Yes, but only if faced head-on. Together they taught even Olympus a lesson it had long forgotten. Love does not belong exclusively to the gods. It belongs to anyone willing to fight for it. In temples across Greece, lovers offered prayers not only to Aphrodite, but to Psyche. They whispered her name before weddings, births, and even funerals, because she was not just a goddess, she was a reminder that the soul can survive despair, that love, when it falls, can rise again, and that no matter how deep the underworld, no matter how sharp the trial, the heart knows the way back. Today, long after the temples crumbled and empires fell, the story still lives in the word psyche, meaning soul, in the word psychology, the study of that soul, and in every tale where love is tested and triumphs. Eros and Psyche live on, not as marble statues, but as an echo inside all of us. Every time we choose trust over fear, forgiveness over pride, and love over silence, we walk their path. And perhaps, like them, we become a little more divine.